Good afternoon. This is attorney Philip Adams with the law offices of Philip Adams here in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I want to talk to you about a topic that I thought about today, specifically what not to do after a DUI arrest, or to phrase it differently, mistakes to avoid after a DUI arrest. Now, being arrested is an extremely traumatic experience for anybody. Having handcuffs placed on you, being thrown into the back of a police cruiser, being carted to a jail, sitting in a jail cell, wondering what your bond is going to be, wondering if you'll even be able to make bond. None of this is a pleasant experience. Wondering what your future is going to hold, being stressed about that, that's obviously not pleasant. So let's rewind. Let's go back to the scene of the arrest and think about this. After you've been arrested, what should you not do? Number one, do not resist arrest. If you resist an arrest, you're likely to make the situation far worse than what it otherwise has to be. You're also likely to incur an additional charge for resisting an officer and or resisting arrest. Keep in mind that being arrested is not a guarantee that you will actually be convicted of a crime, because the burden of proof legally for an arrest is merely probable cause, which is a relatively low burden of proof. Basically, if an objectively reasonable officer under the circumstances can say that there's a fair chance that you committed a crime, then probable cause is met. That's a low burden of proof that is much lower than proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is what is needed to convict you of that DUI charge in the event that you make it all the way to trial in the case. So again, if you're arrested for a DUI, that doesn't necessarily mean your life is over and that you will actually be convicted of a DUI. You might be convicted of DUI, but that you might not. The arrest is not necessarily indicative of what will happen at the trial stage. So don't complicate things by resisting arrest. Don't get physical with law enforcement. Especially don't do that, because you could take an otherwise innocuous situation and that situation could become lethal. If you were to get physical with an officer and he thinks, for instance, that you're trying to reach for his gun, he may very well pull out that gun and use lethal force against you, in which case the end result is that you're dead. Number two, don't be too chatty. You do have rights. You have the right to not self-incriminate yourself. Remember your Fifth Amendment rights. You have the right to remain silent. Although the police may ask you questions, you do not have to answer those questions except to provide information to an officer post-arrest regarding perhaps your name, your driver's license, your vehicle registration, and insurance. If the officer proceeds to ask you questions about the substantive facts of the case, I highly recommend not answering those questions and invoking your Fifth Amendment right and informing the officer that I do not wish to talk to you about substantive elements of this case that you've arrested me for. I demand that I have an attorney present. Number three, do not give an attitude. Speaking in a condescending tone or with an attitude and being combative usually doesn't work out too well, and typically may make an already bad situation worse. This behavior puts you at risk of incurring the ire of a police officer who may, in his discretion, decide to add more charges because of your attitude. It may result in higher bail. It may result in more stress for you, likely will, and more work for your lawyer if that officer is hell-bent on ensuring that you get convicted and speaks to the prosecutor in the case and indicates the attitude that you have, the lack of remorse, and so on. So minding your manners as much as possible is in your best interest, in my opinion. Number four, listen and follow lawful orders. Keeping your cool is incredibly important in a stressful situation like this. While you're doing so, listen to the officer so you know what the officer wants you to do and follow all the lawful orders that are given to you. Everything that you say in a DUI case can impact the severity of that case and any eventual formal charges that might be brought. After an arrest, it's very important that you remember these tips that I've mentioned, and you may wish to consider getting in touch with a DUI attorney to protect yourself and obtain legal representation. Take care.